There are 5 process groups in the 6th edition PMBOK Guide: initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing. Now, when we think about process groups, my students commonly call these phases, even though that is not technically correct, because they are groups of processes which can occur technically on top of each other. So we're going to talk about this from a high-level perspective a little bit here in this video. Now, commonly, we could call initiating, planning, executing, and closing a phase, technically, although it's not correct per the PMBOK Guide. But it's kind of hard to do monitoring and controlling, for example, standalone, because monitoring and controlling starts pretty much the minute we have a project until we finish the project. And so that said, I want to elaborate a little bit on this. Some people think I do initiating, I plan, I execute, I close, I pretty much go straight shot through it. And that is not necessarily always the case. I'm not necessarily going to plan everything out initially because I might not know everything. So I might plan, build, or execute, if you will. Plan, execute, plan, execute, plan, execute, back and forth like that. And as I'm executing, I'm continuing to build that plan as I learn more about what I need or about what I know that I need. So just be aware, we could be in executing and we could go back to initiating. We could be in executing, we could go back to planning. We could be in closing and we could go back to executing or planning or initiating. So it's not once I'm done with one, I just automatically move to the other. Now when we think about this as well, think about from initiating until closing, we're doing monitoring and controlling at the same time. In other words, if we need to, we're watching, we're adjusting, etc. But once we get out of initiating, generally, we start to plan, build. We have kind of a loop going on. That's a plan, build loop or a plan, execute loop, if you will. So as we've got a plan, we start to build. As we build, we start to build on that plan, and we basically build the work of the project. Now, when we think about these process groups, again, remember, it's not necessarily always just a straight shot through it. And each process group will contain groups of processes. So like initiating has 2, closing has 1. I don't remember the exact count, but I think monitoring and controlling has about 8 or 9, maybe 10 in them, approximately. I might be off by a couple there because I know what the processes are. I just don't remember the exact number, but those buckets, if you want to think of them like that, they hold the processes respectively in those groups. And then respectively, we're going to also have a separate video about knowledge areas. So process groups basically go from left to right, if you will, and then knowledge areas go from top to bottom, if you will. So for example, you could have a process that's in planning and in scope, as an example. So that's the basics of how process groups work for us. In one of our other videos, we'll elaborate on knowledge areas in a similar capacity.